Good afternoon, Pottstown. We're here at the beautiful Maple Street Park, and we have another edition of the Making of Pottstown. And today we have somebody that will be pretty familiar to the PCTV audience, Mr. Dave Reidenouer, longtime Pottstonian. And Dave, today we want to talk about, first of all, a little bit about yourself. And I mean, everybody, you've been on the camera for so many years, not everybody knows your history. But then maybe just talk about, like, since we're at Maple Street Park, all the different opportunities and things that when, our generation was growing up about the youth sports in Pottstown, et cetera.
Well, Gary, first of all, thanks for having me, and Gus, and I'm honored to be part of the Making of Pottstown. I've been around, and I hate to tell you how long, 66 years I've been a part of this community, and I've always loved Pottstown. I'm very proud of where I came from, where I grew up, and the schooling and all that. And of course, I worked in the Pottstown School District then as my career. But it's funny, I'm one of the old guys now, and it's a funny feeling to, people are asking me about the history of Pottstown. I look back to people that were 10 years older than me, all the older guys that I ran with, and I know how they went. But it was just a great time. And what I enjoy the most, I think, Gary, is looking back, is seeing the neighborhoods. Everybody had kids in the neighborhood, and we were always out playing. We always had something to do. And if we didn't have enough for a game, we made up a game like Strikeout, where we had a square on the wall, we had two guys and maybe a fielder, and that was it. We always were able to find something to do, and especially being outside especially like on a beautiful day like today.
Yep. Well, some of the things that we're both about the same age. You're obviously much older than I am.
But I look a lot younger than you. I still have my hair, Gary. Don't forget that.
Touche. But we both grew up and grown up in kind of different areas. I was more in the Potts Groves, right. You were more in Pottstown. Right. But we're at Maple Street Park, and I'm looking at a baseball field right now, and the tennis courts that are down here. But like, how did you guys find one another? Now we live in this digital age. How did you find one another to start to play with one another?
Well, it was just a neighborhood. We were lucky. Back in those days, everybody had, neighbors, and we had friends, and we made friends. And I said, half girls, half boys. We played hide and seek and kick the can so we could include everybody. But then we also played our baseballs and basketballs and footballs with the guys, and the girls did their thing. So it wasn't hard to find anybody at all anymore. I know even when my kids, and we moved out of the Pottstown area, we had to drive them everywhere. We weren't dependent on our parents for anything.
Right.
Back in those days, it was pretty nice because dads worked. Moms pretty much stayed at home and sort of looked after the kids.
Right.
And it was a nice situation. We had boundaries. We were allowed to ride our bikes. We got on our bike, put the bat across the handle, glove there, and we rode our bikes to Franklin School or to Zern's, or park there, whatever it was. And we had kids. And so it wasn't difficult at all. Like I said, I know even my children, Chris and Nick, they had a harder time because they didn't have 50 kids right in their backyard.
Right. So when you remember when we started playing, what were some of the fields and the places? I mean, we could just look across the highway here and we see like Moyer's and Home Depot. I mean, when I grew up, like that Town Toy, that was like where we would play our all-star games there,
Well, I played for Town Toy,
right.
So we had our own fields. So we
Beautiful
practiced.
Field.
Yeah, and we could practice every day. And if we had games there, we played. If not, we went to Memorial Park, was always a big one. Franklin Elementary School was a big one. Spruce Street Courts, where they have basketball courts now, that was a combination field and basketball. They didn't have it macadam quite as much as they do now. And right across from there, Zern owned all that, and Yergis and Zern's owned all that, where the car wash, and that was all an open field.
Oh, okay.
So we had plenty. We would go to, some days we were allowed to sneak up to the far fields, which now the Hill School has turned into a beautiful facility.
Absolutely.
But that was all open area for us to play in.
Right. And it really didn't matter what you were playing. That was
Correct.
the other thing.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, you make up games.
Yep.
And again, we're in the age, and both being a former coach and teacher, being a former athletic director, we dealt with organized sports so much. Well, back in those days, there was organized sports, but it was not nearly to like the same kind of structure there is now.
Well, it was structured, Gary, but it wasn't necessary. Like I told my kids, I said, you want to be baseball players. Well, going to baseball practice for your little league where you get 10 swings and 2 bunts is not going to make you a good hitter. We played every day and we got hundreds of swings.
Right.
Even though it was a rubber ball or a tennis ball, we swung the bat and we hit the ball. We didn't have enough fielders. We closed right field. Right field's closed. You hit the right field, it's an out. So we learned to pull the ball. Sometimes we switched it up and said left field's close, so we tried to hit it to right. We did all those things, and pretty much we played baseball, kickball, and basketball out in the north end of town where I grew up. And then in the fall, we played football. I played for the M&M Rams. I was fortunate enough to play with them. There wasn't as much sandlot football for younger kids back in those days, but we played midget football, M&M Rams.
So who did the M&M Rams play? Let's start in the fall season. So you were a football player,
yep.
And when you were growing up, you played with the M&M Rams.
We were in the Bucksmont League.
And they played you practiced out of Memorial Park.
Yes, we did.
Right.
Or the far fields.
Okay, and how many teams were there with the M&M Rams?
They had weight class teams back then. We had, I think it was 65s, 80s, 95s, and 115s.
Right.
So there were like 4. But see, and a lot of people don't realize this, that I learned later on, that the parochial schools didn't have junior high football. So it was started by the parochial school, started the midget and M&M Rams football. So the kids who went to Catholic school had somewhere to play. They didn't have anywhere to play if they didn't play for the M&M Rams.
What did M&M stand for? Do you remember?
It's just, I don't know.
Miller and Moeller.
Miller, was it?
Miller and Moeller. Remember they used to be
that was M&M. I didn't know that's what it stood for.
I think it was. They were the first sponsor, I think.
Okay.
I think so. I just like one of those.
Well, I know our colors were green and gold and they were beautiful. We had great equipment. I remember Bechtel's bringing us stuff out and we had awesome equipment.
Yep.
But most of the kids that I played M&M Rams football with were Catholic school kids.
Okay.
And we only had a few of us public school kids that played for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fall, you got football. So who were the teams that you played in the Bucksmont League? So M&M Rams.
Pendel, Lansdale, Quakertown. We didn't play the Dorchester Red Knights for those guys. They were in their own separate league.
Okay.
We played in the it might even be called the Pendel League, Bucksmont, whatever league. So
your mom and dad drove you there?
Yeah. Every game,
yep.
Yeah. And we would pick up my buddy Ricky Philman, who I loved, Topper Blanding, who I loved. They'd be standing on the corner. My mom would pick them up, and we'd go to the games every Saturday morning. And then when we had home games, we played at Memorial Park, which was the outfield of that big baseball diamond. It used to go from the river out this way. Now it goes the other way now.
Right.
Yeah, and we played. That's where we had our home games.
Right.
And a lot of times they only had one set of goalposts. Even though I don't remember kicking extra points much, but we'd have to turn around and go back if the other team wanted to try an extra point.
Oh, that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So how many guys were on your team?
Well, I would say 25 maybe.
So 25 times 5 or 6?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of kids for Pottstown.
And it wasn't, I don't think there was ever a time that we were hurting for kids. And there might even have been a time where we had I don't want to say A and B, but an A and B team. So the 85-pounders had one team and then another because they had so many kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you go from
your buddy Carl Burns' father helped to run that. He was one of my favorite guys of all time.
Carl played there too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So they were great times, and we were really, really good. And my one big memory was we went down to Virginia for a bowl game. We were the 115s. And we were 12-0 or whatever we were, and we went down there, and you got a chance, where you went, you stayed with a player on the other team and his family.
Oh, really?
It was really a neat deal. But they beat us like 38-0. They were really good. Plus, they went to 125 or 130. They were bigger than us.
Right.
And it didn't sound like a lot, but when you're 11, 12 years old, those bigger dudes, I mean, they waffled us on the offensive and defensive lines.
Right.
I think we may have scored one.
That's
but
fine.
I know we got crushed. But it was a great experience down in Virginia.
Oh yeah, you still remember it.
Absolutely, I do.
So so we get done fall season, you go into the winter season. So you primarily basketball, wrestling for the most part.
At the YMCA.
In those days, really.
We went to the old YMCA on King and Evans. That's where we went.
Okay.
There was only certain places we were allowed to go to, and we had to take our group of guys. We had swimming there. I learned to swim there. Wrestling, old Teb Farrow from the Hill School. And then we had weekend hoops. But that was the first place I ever saw color television. We would go there on Saturday mornings and watch with Clapper White was the main man down there. When you said Clapper White, everybody was like, oh, this dude was awesome. And
for the audience, tell who Clapper White is.
Well, Clapper White was a guy who was just a stud. He was a great weightlifter. He was in an army, Quandaverous or something crazy first name, half Jamaican, I think, from the islands. And this is a super guy, and he helped to run the YMCA and the old Bethany Center. Yeah.
Which became the Ricketts Center.
Correct.
Right,
yep,
right.
Yep. And he was the guy who ran that. Saturday mornings, we'd go down there and watch cartoons and play ping pong and stuff like that, and watch color TV.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
It is.
So springtime, you come around to baseball season. That's
baseball.
really mostly this community was a baseball town.
It was. Yeah, and I said now, Gus and I were talking before the show that they had to combine little leagues with Pottsgrove and all that.
I know.
I said, man, there used to be so many kids playing little league
I
baseball.
remember going to the opening day of, and when I was with, whatever, they'd come and ask you to speak for the opening day.
Yeah.
There's 600 kids there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. So, and I said earlier, I played for Town Toy. I was very lucky. I started out with St. John's. I was actually on the same team with Tommy Schumann and those guys who were all a lot older than me. And I was the little catcher, and I remember Schumann's pitching, and I had a glove, and he gave me a pad
because he threw too hard.
Yeah, but every time I tried to catch the ball, it knocked my glove off. But I was the catcher on the team with the Troyon boys and Tommy Schumann and Scarbeck, all those guys, and they were a lot older than me, but I loved it, and that's how I got better.
Right.
I played with better kids and bigger kids all the time.
So let's talk about a little bit of the influences, because really, I think we both have had, number of influencers in our lives that just did so many things on a volunteer basis that never asked for any credit, but they were very influential individuals.
Well, obviously we had a lot of those, and I'm in a little different situation. My father died when I was young, so my teachers and my coaches were really a big part of my life, and thank God for them, because I don't know what would have happened had I not been involved with all that. And that's why I try to push as a former teacher and coach all these kids into in the areas. Like my little grandson now, I want him, he's going to be 5. I said, now's the time to get him rolling, but yeah, I had so many, and the owner of Town Toy, and his name is escaping, but like Sorelli or something like that. Anyway, great man. Like I said, he built those where the Moyers is down there. We had our own fields down there.
Oh, beautiful field.
Yeah.
That's the only place that had dugouts.
Yeah, exactly. And they had their own concession stand.
Yep.
But I'll tell you a funny story. But the first thing I know, we got new uniforms every year. We had to sell 1 box of candy. There were 12 candy bars in there for $1 a piece, which was a lot back in the 60s.
We all sold that candy.
Yeah, we sold that for $1 a piece. We had to sell those 12, and as soon as we turned in our money, they gave us our new uniform.
Oh, that's funny.
Every year.
That is funny.
Yeah, but like Bill Missimer, Mike Missimer's father, he was always down there. A guy named Mr. Kelly. Guys like Stixie and Dave Bennett's father, Harry Bennett, was involved. All those guys were involved, and when we were little, and then of course, older I got guys, but when I was younger, those are the guys I kind of remember that stood out in my mind. And of course, Carl Burns, Twiggy, those guys were my coaches down there at M&M Rams. And Teb Froze, I mentioned, he was a Hill School guy, taught wrestling. We learned to swim at the YMCA. Ralph McDonald, he would take us and throw us in the water, and that's how you learned how to swim.
Drown-proofing.
Yeah.
They call that drown-proofing.
And I hope I can say this, and nobody gets offended, but back then it was all men. We had to swim naked. We had no bathing suits, no nothing, because of the chlorine, and I forget what all it was. Everybody's in there. They threw us in the pool, and that's how we had to swim.
Really?
Yeah. And then we came out and showered and got our stuff.
That's.
In today's world, those guys would be doing 10 years or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
But nobody. It was just what it was. It was all boys.
Right.
We were 10 and under. They had different.
That's going to be the
categories.
takeaway from this show.
Yeah, I know. The flying fish and I forget all. And they give you a little badge when you can make it across the pool this way, or tread water for 2 minutes or whatever it was. They gave us these little badges. But yeah, it was down there and that's the first time.
That's where I learned to swim too.
And the basketball players were called cagers. I didn't realize it. They had cages. There was no out of bounds. There was cages all around the court.
Really?
Yes. So the ball was in play everywhere that you went.
No kidding.
So if you were a fan, you had to sit on the other side of the cage.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So now this is really the time too that race relations became, you know, very important. And I think, again, both of us being in athletics, you know, we never saw color. I mean, I never saw color.
Right.
I know you didn't.
Right.
You
No,
played with a
absolutely.
teammate. Either
Yeah.
they made a play or they didn't make a
Right,
play. It
yeah.
wasn't, you know.
Yeah.
And I think part of the allure of Pottstown was that integration of specifically sports that really helped.
Well, and it definitely was, and it was an adjustment. I'm not going to say there wasn't an adjustment period, because if you grew up in the North End or the East End, you didn't have black people around.
Right.
But once you start playing with them, and they start playing with you, you know, it was both ways. You know,
Right.
they didn't know us, we didn't know them. But I said, my mom, you know, we picked up Topper Blanding, who was black, every week to go to the games. Ricky Philman lived down in the south end of town, down near Princey's Bakery. I mean, so we had people from all over the town, and we all got along.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure it was a little, I don't remember it being odd or unusual or awkward, but I'm sure there was an adjustment period by everybody, especially when we got to like junior high school, where we were really integrated at Northern Junior High or Central Junior High School,
Right.
where, you know, it was a big mix.
And that was really where I was going, because then you kind of, everybody moved into school programs where, you know, the initial, you know, uncomfortableness or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it is gone.
Yeah.
So now it's just play.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it was uncomfortable.
No, it was. That's not really the
right.
right-
But I mean, awkward or
New-
different.
new.
There you go. New. Exactly right. Yeah. And so, you know, next thing you know is, you know, these guys are sitting in your living room and watching TV with you, or, you know, mom's making them a snack and whatever, and that's the way it was. And like I said, I mean, obviously there was issues everywhere.
Sure.
But it didn't. It wasn't racial. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about some of those guys and girls that you've played with or grew up with, that, you know, maybe the community would remember now. Of, you know, I think we're now a society that kind of forgets about people's history
Yeah.
and their accomplishments and accolades, and there was some tremendous athletes that came through this town.
Yeah, well, Pottstown was big time, but I laughed because I said people don't even know who Howard Brown is anymore. And Howard Brown was the guy. Tommy Harvey, Howard Brown, Michael Pray. I mean, for a long time, those guys, Del Savage. And so the Dave Reidenouers and the Todd Detars and the Lovey Joneses and all those guys that were there. You know, when I came up, excuse me, you know, they had Tommy Schumann, they had
Pick out maybe 3 or 4
I
guys.
said Tommy Schumann, Jack Dillaplane,
Right.
Jay Nash, Stevie Verbit, Kim Dunn, Vince. I mean, those guys were unbelievable. Then you got to the basketball side with the Lacey's, Frankie and Kennard, you had Mike Mismer. You had all those guys that we all looked up to, and then we got the chance to play
And
with
they all
them.
grew up in Pottstown.
Absolutely. They're all Pottstown people, for sure. And I said, you know, it was funny because I always thought Phoenixville, Pottstown, and Coatesville were similar. You know, we had a similar makeup as far as people, white, black, Hispanic, whatever it was. And so when we used to hook up with those teams, it was unbelievable. It was like really a lot of fun, and we had a good time. You know, the Thorntons and the Ford Bays and Phoenixville.
Right.
And you can list everybody from Coatesville that played. You know, I played against
Abel
Walt.
Joe.
Yeah, I played against him.
Thompson's.
And I played against Walt Downing, who got 3 Super Bowl rings with the 49ers. You know, he was a center, went to University of Michigan. So, I mean, it was a great time. The Chestmont League, I will always back forever and ever. I'm a Chestmont League guy. We had no weeks off, no games off. I don't care what sport it was.
Right.
And it was just a lot of fun. And I'm glad I grew up when I did. I really am. And it was wonderful. And, you know, you talked about some of my influences, but I'd be remiss without talking about Bill Rogers.
Yep.
And Danny Weller, Mush Bechtel, Jan Fritz.
Bechtel's, there's another one. We
Bechtel's.
haven't even touched base on Bechtel's. Think about
Well,
Bechtel's Sporting
I
Goods,
know.
what they did for
Yeah.
this community of not only youth sports, but swimming, because he,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like,
And baseball. They
Absolutely.
did all baseball. They did Boyertown's basall for years.
Right.
New uniforms. I used to love going downstairs where the bats were. Oh, God, it even smelled great down there, you know, and whatever. But, you know, like Ronnie Hallman. I mean, those guys were, you know, they were just awesome for me, and they took real good care of me. And Janice, who I became very, very good friends with, Bechtel,
Right.
now Frederick, you know, she was really good. Her and Jean Whistler were the 2 Pottstown women that really promoted women's sports and whatever they did. And so it was a great time, and I loved it, and I'm glad I grew up when I did. I really am. And
what are some of the opportunities do you think that being involved in youth sports and community sports specifically in Pottstown that it afforded you?
Well, it afforded
or afforded anybody really that put in an effort, had fun, made friends, etc.
Well, it just gave me all kinds of opportunities. Again, if we weren't playing, what else are you going to do? You're getting in trouble, or you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, or whatever. And back in those days, not only weren't we allowed to be in the house all day, but we didn't want to be.
Right.
So it afforded us to do everything. Like, there were times I played a couple of things that I didn't really care for, but we played them because that's what the kids wanted to do. So I just did. You said about friends and meeting people. I've been very, very fortunate. I used to know a lot of people in this area, and then growing up and playing sports and doing my thing, and then of course with Gus and Mark and those guys, the opportunities they provided for me and gave me here on PCTV. I expanded now. I didn't know a thing about Perkiomen Valley, not a thing about it.
Right.
Now Robbie Heist, I love the guy. He's a football coach down there. Furman, all those guys that I got a chance to meet. Now at Spring Ford, Merle Bainbridge and those guys. I did a game with Rod Johnson the other day again, and Rod and I, we didn't like each other. He was at Spring Ford, I was at Pottstown. We were trying to beat each other.
Right.
And he was a hard-nosed guy, and so was I. But it provided us opportunities. Rick Pennypacker is another prime example of that. Somebody that you certainly know a lot about and whatever. So, it's pretty wild. And fortunately for me, that I had a lot of successes. That I was honored at Coatesville, Downingtown, places like that I didn't know much about at all. We didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't go a lot of places. So when I got to go to, my coach would pick me up, take me to Coatesville for a dinner, I'd get something, take me to Downingtown. It was awesome for me, and I met guys. I met all those big time Ross Kersheys and coaches down there that were legendary. Al Black,
right?
Guys like that I was able to meet because of this.
Yep.
This Franklin Elementary School, Town Toy,
yep.
The YMCA, and it's just, I would love to see that turn back that way. I don't know if it ever will. I know you need a permission slip to go across the street anymore, Gary.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And we knew our boundaries. We got on our bikes and we rode and had to be careful. But it was
fun.
It was fun. It was fun, and we could go and like I said, play with the black kids, play with the Spanish, whatever it was,
right.
And got along and played hoops and ball and
didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
Your game spoke.
Exactly
yep.
right. Exactly right. And it was just the way it was. And then there was certainly times where it got a little intense, but afterwards you picked each other up, and back then we didn't give the fist pumps or any of that stuff. We high five,
right.
Whatever. But it was good stuff. And I'll cherish the Lovey Joneses of the world
yep.
all the time. Francis and Frankie Clayton, oh my God.
And you see them every once in a while, and
I love reunions.
You just get a glimpse of like, man, that guy was phenomenal.
That's why I love my class reunions.
Yeah.
George Wise, who I ended up playing against, he went to Shippensburg. I wanted him to come to Bloomsburg. He didn't come. He went to Ship. Those guys, and I played against him, and I was like, George, I said, you should be here on our side, but the guys like that, it was awesome, awesome.
So to kind of wrap this thing up, I'm going to ask you, put you on a spot a little bit.
Uh-oh.
I only give you 3 because everybody uses 3.
All right.
Your 2 most favorite, poignant memories growing up in Pottstown, specifically playing youth sports, whether it was making the final out or whatever it was, just one memory that you still kind of get goosebumps about, or you just kind of smile about, like, man, that was just a great day?
Wow, you are putting me on. The one I do remember was I was fortunate enough to win the pass, punt, and kick, and advance down into Philly. And before a game, we did the pass, punt, and kick
before the Eagles game.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be
pretty cool. That was really, really cool. That was one thing I remember. I'll tell you another thing that we didn't mention. That we used to, once a year, they'd take all the Pottstown Little League down to the Phillies game at old Connie Mack Stadium. And they'd put us in a big old yellow school bus, and it was always hot. We had our uniforms on there. We were all there with our
polyester uniforms?
Yeah, and they were hot. And we went down there, and Richie Allen, he was then, it was Dick Allen, hit one over the scoreboard and over.
Sounded different.
Yes, and I think it's still going up somewhere. That was like 600 feet. But that was a day it was great because once we got there, we were in our seats and we're out in no man's land, of course, where they put all the kids and stuff, which was cool. But they gave us a soda and a hot dog, and we got a chance to see the Phillies play.
Yep.
That was something else. And then I think maybe that trip to Virginia was pretty cool for me.
Yep.
You know, as I mentioned earlier, playing in a they had a name for a bowl game. I forget what it was called.
Right,
we had
right.
to qualify to do it, and we got down there and got you know, our rear ends kicked. But it was still a great. And I stayed with an awesome family. You know, they had a beautiful home, and Mrs. Jones, whatever her name was, man, she cooked it. Oh my God! I was like, we ain't gonna make weight. They got to weigh us in because back in
they were the 25 pounders.
Yeah, they were the 25s. We were the 15s. But I guess that's probably a couple that come right to mind, other than my daily, everyday fun
right.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Well, on behalf of PCTV, I know it's really on behalf of everybody in Pottstown. It's good to reminisce with somebody that's been here their entire life.
Yeah.
66 years. When did you graduate high school?
76.
76. Then you matriculated to Bloomsburg and played 4 years of football there and had a great career and came back here and had a great life here.
I did. I really did. I was fortunate enough to teach and coach in the Pottstown School District.
Yep.
And as I said, the opportunity provided to me by the PCTV gang for over 35 years was, you know, I was really a lot of fun. And
yeah, you don't look that old.
I know I don't. Thanks, Gary.
Well, again, we thank you for joining us once again for the making of Pottstown. We hope you had a couple laughs, learned a few things, and reminisced a little bit about the wonderful town of Pottstown. So until next time, thank you. Good.